The Indiana Fever was preparing for a leaner roster. Then Caitlin Clark stepped in. Her push to retain Sophie Cunningham and Lexie Hull over cheaper or flashier alternatives redefined what team building looks like in this new era. This wasn't management's decision alone. It was Clark's chemistry-driven conviction that stability beats shuffling. Her message was unspoken but unmistakable. Loyalty matters and cohesion wins.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
She's not just a franchise player. She's a political force inside the locker room, shaping who stays, who goes, and what kind of culture this team will run on. What makes this move stand out isn't just Clark's clout, it's how she used it. In a league grappling with looming CBA talks and financial pressure, Clark prioritized continuity over volatility, chemistry over cap. It's a tactical decision with ripple effects. Less disruption, more cohesion, and a clear message that Indiana won't sacrifice relationships for short-term gains. For a rookie to redefine how influence is wielded quietly, firmly, without spectacle, signals a sharp new direction for how star power will shape the WNBA moving forward. The WNBA just got hit with a reality check, and the name on the envelope is Caitlin Clark. She's not even a full season into her pro career, and she's already shifting the balance of power inside the Indiana Fever, and possibly the entire league. Not with press conferences or ego-fueled ultimatums. No headlines screaming scandal. No Instagram lives or cryptic tweets. Just a quiet, behind-the-scenes move that sent a loud message. Caitlin Clark isn't just the face of the future. She's steering it now. Here's what happened. There were talks in Indiana about trimming the roster, making financial decisions, letting some players go. Normal team management stuff, especially for a franchise, trying to rebuild itself from the ground up. And on that list, Sophie Cunningham and Lexie Hull. Two players who, to some, might have seemed like expendable pieces. But not to Caitlin Clark. Sources say Clark stepped in, not with drama, but with intention. She made it known, behind the scenes, that those two players weren't just her teammates. They were part of the core, part of the trust circle. And if the front office wanted to keep the team chemistry alive, they had better think twice before letting them go. And just like that, Sophie and Lexie stayed. No flashy public statement. No storming into the GM's office. But make no mistake, this wasn't passive influence. This was a power play, and everyone in the league felt the aftershocks. The Fever didn't just listen, they acted. They chose culture and cohesion over cap space and convenience. And it's because Caitlin Clark told them what mattered. That's a massive shift in how things operate. Traditionally, WNBA players, especially rookies, haven't had this kind of pull. Coaches and execs make the calls, and players follow orders. Star or not, rookies are expected to earn their stripes quietly. But Clark didn't wait. She knew exactly what she wanted, and she made sure the organization knew too. What stands out is that she didn't go over the top with it. No power struggle. No front office showdown. Just a strategic move, handled like a seasoned vet, executed with the calm of someone who's done this before. That's not just talent. That's leadership. Clark has shown she's not just a scoring machine or a media darling. She's someone who understands the intricacies of team dynamics, who belongs, who makes the group better, and who needs to be there when it counts. Her support for Cunningham and Hull wasn't just about loyalty. It was about chemistry, stability, winning. Sophie Cunningham brings energy, grit, and that edge you need when things get tough. Lexie Hull is a culture player. Low maintenance, high motor, smart defense. They're not your headline makers, but they're the kind of players who hold a team together in the trenches. And Clark knows the value of that. She sees the long game. She could have stayed silent, could have let the front office do its thing. But instead, she made a statement without ever making it public. And that changes everything. It's the kind of influence we're used to seeing in the NBA. Think of LeBron shaping rosters. Think of Steph Curry advocating for his core guys. That level of behind-the-scenes muscle, that ability to nudge decisions without needing to flex publicly, that's where Clark is headed, and fast. She's not just a rookie. She's a franchise centerpiece. And now, She's proving she's a stakeholder in how that franchise is built. This isn't a fluke. It's not a one-time thing. It's part of a much larger trend that's been brewing under the surface for years. Athletes across all sports are pushing for more agency, more say in how teams are constructed. The difference now? It's happening in the WNBA, and it's happening early. Clark is setting a precedent. It says star players don't have to wait 5 or 10 years to have influence. They don't need MVPs or titles before their voices are heard. If they bring value on the court, at the box office, in the culture, they've earned the right to shape the future. And the Fever got the message. They didn't just make a roster move. They made a philosophical one. They're signaling that they trust their star's instincts, that they value what she sees day to day in practice, in the locker room, in the intangibles that analytics don't capture. Because that's what Clark is doing. She's valuing the intangibles. Yes, stats matter, but trust matters more. Chemistry matters more. You can't build a championship team out of spreadsheets. You need loyalty, connection, players who fight for each other. And when you find that, you protect it. Clark did, and the Fever followed. It's also worth pointing out the timing. This all went down just before what could be a volatile offseason for the WNBA. With league negotiations looming, possible collective bargaining tension, and a general sense of uncertainty in the air, Clark's move to lock down stability speaks volumes. It's a message, not just to her team, but to the league. She's not chasing short-term wins. She's thinking about the big picture, about sustainability, about building something that can weather whatever's coming next. At 21 years old, that's not normal. That's not just maturity, it's vision. And it's exactly what the WNBA needs right now. It's also part of a larger cultural shift in women's sports. For years, female athletes were expected to just play. Don't ask questions. Don't push for more. Be grateful. Stay in line. But those days? Over. Clark's move is proof that players today aren't afraid to assert their influence. They're not waiting for permission to lead. They're not relying on agents or press releases to fight their battles. They're making strategic moves directly and quietly and shifting the power dynamics in ways that matter. It's subtle, but it's seismic. And the broader impact? Massive. Other stars in the league are watching. Rookies coming up are watching. Coaches and execs are watching. Because this changes how the game is played off the court. It forces teams to rethink how they manage talent, how they build trust, and how they handle their stars. Clark didn't just help keep 2 teammates employed. She helped redefine what leadership looks like in the WNBA. And she did it without needing a public crusade. That's influence. That's power. And if you're still doubting whether this was the right move, just look at what didn't happen. The Fever didn't unravel. There was no media mess, no chemistry collapse. Instead, they leaned into what Clark was building. They preserved it. And now, they have a team that believes in each other. That's rare. And Clark knew it was worth fighting for. This is a turning point, not just for the Fever, but for the entire league. Because when the next young star sees what Clark just pulled off, they're going to remember it. They're going to know that their voice matters earlier than anyone told them it would. That's the future. That's where the league is headed. And Caitlin Clark didn't just open the door. She kicked it off the hinges. If you're following this story and seeing the shifts happening in real time, make sure you hit that like button. Share this with someone who still thinks rookies can't lead. And drop a comment. Did Clark make the right call stepping in like this? Or are we seeing a star with too much influence too soon? Subscribe if you want more breakdowns just like this. Because this league, it's changing fast, and we're keeping track of every power move. The moment Caitlin Clark stepped into the WNBA, the hype was deafening. But nobody was fully prepared for how quickly that hype would translate into power. Not just media buzz or ticket sales, but real, tangible front office influence. The kind of influence that, up until now, was reserved for 10-year vets and MVPs. And here's the part no one's really talking about. Clark didn't ask for this power. She didn't stomp her feet or demand roster control. She didn't need to. Her presence alone has changed the stakes for the Indiana Fever. She became too valuable to ignore, on and off the court. The second she walked into that franchise, the blueprint shifted. And when the front office started floating ideas about cutting Cunningham and Hull to make financial room, Clark made her stance clear. These two stay. And suddenly, the conversation changed. That's not just about star power. That's about trust. A franchise placing their future in the hands of a 21-year-old rookie because they believe she sees something they might miss. And honestly, she does. She sees how culture builds winning teams. You can't put a price tag on locker room loyalty. You can't run a stat line for trust. And yet, that's what teams mess up over and over again. Chasing talent over chemistry, savings over sustainability. The Fever were headed straight for that trap, and Clark stopped them cold. Let's talk about the stakes for a second. The Fever weren't exactly operating from a place of strength. They've been bottom dwellers for years, juggling draft picks and turnover with little to show for it. Then Clark arrives, and suddenly they're relevant again. National games, packed arenas, the kind of buzz they haven't seen in over a decade. That kind of momentum is rare and fragile. Cutting the wrong players at the wrong time, that's how you kill it. That's how you fracture trust from the inside. But keeping the right ones? The ones who understand the mission, the ones who put the team first, the ones who Clark believes in, that's how you build something real. Cunningham and Hull aren't just roster fillers. They're culture setters. They're the teammates who bring energy in film sessions, who push the pace in practice, who say the hard things in the locker room when a coach can't. Clark recognized that, and she fought for it. That tells you everything about her leadership style. She's not trying to be the boss. She's trying to build a team that wins. And she knows it starts with the intangibles: accountability, consistency, trust, all the stuff you don't see on highlight reels. And let's be clear, this isn't just about keeping her friend around. It's about preserving the core. A rookie doesn't protect a veteran like Cunningham unless she understands what that veteran brings. And she doesn't go to bat for Lexie Hull unless she knows Hull is doing the invisible work that keeps teams together. That's a level of awareness most players don't develop until way later in their careers. Clark walked into the league with it. What's even more wild is the Fever listened. Because this isn't the kind of league where players, especially rookies, typically get to call these shots. And yet Clark did. Not with a public tantrum, not with a power play, but with calm, strategic influence. She made her preferences known. She stood firm. She didn't need to escalate it. And her franchise made it happen. Now that's a shift. The WNBA has always lagged behind the NBA in terms of player influence. But Clark is changing that dynamic. Not by demanding it, but by making herself too central to ignore. She's not just playing the game. She's guiding it, one decision at a time. And now, that power shift is out in the open. Other stars are watching. You think players like Aya Wilson or Breanna Stewart haven't clocked this move? You think rookies coming up in the next few years aren't going to model their careers off this exact moment? This is the start of something. Not a one-time flex, but a blueprint. Clark showed that you can use your voice without burning bridges, that you can fight for what matters without creating drama. That strategic influence, public confrontation. And it worked. The Fever are walking into the rest of the season with a more unified locker room because of it. Their chemistry is intact. The trust is stronger. The leadership dynamic is clear. Clark doesn't need to yell or posture. She just moves and people follow. And when you zoom out, the implications for the league are enormous. We're entering an era where WNBA players are going to shape their teams from day one, where management doesn't just draft players for what they do on the court, but for who they are in the huddle. Clark is leading that evolution, not by chasing control, but by embodying leadership so thoroughly that control just comes to her. It's subtle, but it's total. The league can't afford to ignore player influence anymore. Not when stars like Clark are showing that their input leads to smarter decisions. Not when their presence is directly tied to ticket sales, jersey revenue, national TV deals, and cultural momentum. Because here's the thing. Clark's not just a point guard. She's an asset in every room. Marketing, public relations, broadcast rights. She impacts all of it. So when she says, these two players are essential to our team's chemistry, the front office listens. Because they know she's thinking beyond just basketball. She's thinking about the brand, the fans, the future. That's why this wasn't overreach. This wasn't too much too soon. This was exactly the kind of leadership the WNBA needs more of. Smart, steady, unshakable. It's also incredibly intentional. She waited for the right moment, right before a potentially chaotic offseason, right before a period where teams may be tempted to make rash decisions for short-term flexibility. Clark's move said, "Not here. Not on my watch." She brought stability when it mattered most. And that's not just a win for Indiana. It's a win for the WNBA. Because stability is what builds dynasties. And the Fever, for the first time in a long time, are thinking like one. Now here's the real question. What happens next? Will other players feel empowered to speak up sooner? Will teams start baking player input into their decision-making process? Will this moment shift how GMs and coaches interact with their stars moving forward? Because if this is the new normal, the WNBA is about to look very different in the next few years. Gone are the days of top-down control, where executives made decisions in a vacuum. If you've got a Caitlin Clark in your building, you don't just ask what she thinks, you build around it. That's where the league is headed. And if you're still wondering whether Clark overstepped, ask yourself this. Did the Fever lose control of their team? Or did they just avoid a roster shakeup that could have blown up their season? The answer is clear. Clark didn't just protect her teammates. She protected the franchise. So yeah, the WNBA should be in shock. Because the game has changed. And Caitlin Clark is holding the playbook now. Caitlin Clark didn't just save 2 teammates. She rewrote the rules of engagement in the WNBA. And the craziest part? She did it without ever having to raise her voice. Think about how rare that is. Most rookie players, even the great ones, come in with their heads down, focused on adjusting to the speed of the game, figuring out where they fit, try not to rock the boat. Clark? She walked in with her eyes wide open and understood immediately that influence isn't just about points and assists. It's about knowing what holds a team together when things get tough, and making sure that glue doesn't get cut for cap flexibility. The Indiana Fever were ready to move on from Sophie Cunningham and Lexie Hull. Make no mistake, those conversations were happening. Numbers were being crunched. Contracts were being reviewed. On paper, letting them go might have made sense. But Clark didn't look at the spreadsheet. She looked at the locker room. And she said, no, not in a press release. Not in a viral soundbite. But in a way that got the message across loud and clear. These are my people. These are the teammates I trust. And if we're going to win, we do it together. That's not ego. That's intuition. Clark understood what some front offices still don't. Culture is currency. You don't build dynasties with stats. You build them with people who believe in each other. And she made sure Indiana didn't throw that away in the name of short-term strategy. And let's be clear, this wasn't about stacking the team with her friends for comfort. This was about protecting the foundational pieces that make the day-to-day grind of a season sustainable. Sophie Cunningham brings fire, vocal leadership, and experience. Lexie Hull brings consistency, defensive intensity, and team-first mentality. Those aren't just nice-to-haves. They're essential, especially on a team trying to climb out of irrelevance. Clark saw that, and she fought for it. And the Fever? They listened, which tells you exactly how much weight Clark already carries within the organization. She's not even through her first season, and she's already operating like a franchise anchor, someone whose input matters at every level. Let that sink in. She didn't have to go through years of earning her voice. She didn't need to wait for an all-star nod. Her value was already undeniable. And when she spoke up, management responded. That kind of respect isn't just handed out. It's earned through presence, professionalism, and instinct. And it changes the blueprint for every rookie that follows her. Before this, the unwritten rule was simple. Wait your turn. Prove yourself. Then, maybe you'll get a seat at the table. Clark blew that idea wide open. She proved that if you understand the moment, if you recognize what's truly at stake, you can lead right away. And people will follow. That kind of leadership doesn't come from age. It comes from clarity. Clark knew what mattered most to this team at this specific moment. Not a trade. Not a flashy signing. Stability. Keeping the trust intact. Keeping the energy focused. Not letting the team get distracted or demoralized by seeing core pieces cut. Because one wrong move at this stage, that's how you lose the locker room. That's how you lose momentum. And in a league still fighting for consistent visibility and growth, momentum is everything. What Clark just did goes beyond Indiana. This is a league-wide wake-up call, a clear sign that we're entering a new phase of player empowerment, one where stars don't just influence the game, they influence the structure around it. The WNBA has never really operated this way. It's always been more top-down, more cautious. But Clark is showing the league what happens when you let players lead with strategy, not ego. When you value insight from the floor as much as analysis from the front office. And honestly, it's about time. Because here's the truth. The players are the product. They're the reason fans show up. They're the faces on jerseys, the voices in interviews, the stories people follow. So why shouldn't they have a say in how their teams are built? Clark isn't asking for control. She's asking for collaboration. She's saying, I know this team. I feel the pulse of this group. And if you're serious about building something real, something lasting, you have to value that internal insight. And when she said that, without saying it, the Fever listened. This moment also exposes a bigger truth about how the game is evolving. The analytics movement has taken over almost every level of basketball. Lineups, cap space, minutes, shot charts. But what Clark just proved is that some things can't be measured. Leadership, loyalty, unity, trust. You can't put that on a spreadsheet. But if you ignore it, you'll pay the price. Clark saw that danger before it became reality. And she took action. And let's not forget the context. This all happened ahead of a potentially chaotic offseason. League negotiations are coming. There's talk of major changes. A possible lockout looming. The last thing any team needs right now is internal chaos. And Clark made sure the Fever avoided it. She stabilized her team before the storm hit. That's not just smart. It's calculated. And it's a message to everyone else in the league. This is how you lead. Quietly. Clearly. With purpose. Clark didn't need to yell to be heard. She didn't need drama to get attention. She just moved with certainty and got results. That's how influence works when it's earned. And now, the bar is officially higher. Young stars coming into the league are watching this play out. They're realizing that leadership isn't about waiting your turn. It's about knowing who you are, what your team needs, and being brave enough to speak up before someone else makes a mistake. Clark did that, and it worked. Now every team in the WNBA has a decision to make. Adapt or get left behind. If they want to build competitive rosters that last, they can't just draft talent and hope for the best. They have to invest in partnerships. With their players. With the culture. With the long-term chemistry that makes a team feel like a team. And Caitlin Clark? She's the blueprint. If you're still holding on to the idea that rookies shouldn't have a voice, that leadership has to be earned over a decade, it's time to let that go. Clark just proved that what matters isn't how long you've been in the league. It's how clearly you understand what your team needs, and how confidently you're willing to fight for it. She didn't just save Cunningham and Hall. She saved the identity the Fever were starting to build. She preserved something that can't be bought or traded, belief. And that might be the most powerful thing she's done yet. If you're here for this kind of shift, the real, behind-the-scenes moves that shape the future of the game, go ahead and hit that like button. Share this with someone still sleeping on what Caitlin Clark is actually doing out there. And drop a comment. Is this the beginning of a player-led revolution or just a one-time power play? Subscribe for more coverage of the moments that really matter, because the WNBA isn't just growing, it's changing. And we're here for every move that shakes the system.